How serious is your freedom? Now, what do I mean by that? We have some areas that are embracing Sharia law. We have some areas that are taking time out of the day to allow for the Muslim prayer to go over. There's other places that are wanting to overtax you and take away your savings as you get older. And instead of passing inheritance down to children, no longer that. We're going to have a Social Security mentality to where when you die, it all becomes the government's money. Does that look like freedom? What about another area that we consider the West is saying if you choose to have an extra bedroom in your house, if you choose to build these houses, we're going to tax you more because you're taking up space that you didn't need. This is not freedom. We're going to discuss those things. Also, we're going to talk about what Trump just got, which is great news. The tariff situation, when everybody dogged it out, you're going to hear what the CBO just said. The CBO now, which is the Congressional Budget Office, who typically doesn't like Trump and who typically skews the numbers in the wrong way. They come out with an admittance, and I think it's good news for conservatives, especially the ones who are not as happy with Trump. We'll talk about that. And also we're going to talk about what DeSantis is saying. The one thing that every governor and every mayor and every legislative should be saying, that taxes are too much. They're too scrupulous. And property tax, along with most income tax, should be abolished. We're going to discuss some of these stories and a few more. Let's dive in. Hey guys, welcome to our channel. Thank you so very much for being here. Remember, we have a vlog coming out today on Life with Colby Mac. Please go check that channel out. We need your support there. That helps us just in case something happens to this channel. We have that channel up and running. But you also see how we prepare, how we live sustainable each and every day. Some of the great things that happens on the farm, some of the hard things that happens on the farm, but ultimately you see how we live every day. So go check out that vlog. Now, let's talk about the stories of the day. First, let's jump into this push of, again, where's our freedom coming from, or are we free or not? I want to go over a few studies, and again, some of these deal with America, but some of them doesn't. The point of what I'm talking about, though, is the movement of what a lot of the West, quote-unquote West does, Europe, Australia, other areas, we ended up just embracing. It seems to fall to our liberal cities first, and then we go right into the rest of the heartland. This is the story from Austria. Now, this is, again, in Europe. It says, a court in Austria has ruled that Sharia law is legally binding. Legally binding. And this is the start of us embracing Islam. You don't believe it? Listen to this. In Minneapolis, Minnesota, that's in America if you don't know. America. What's going on in Minneapolis? This is from a CBS News article. It says, Muslim call to prayer will now broadcast over the city's loudspeaker as early as 3:30 a.m. and as late as 11 o'clock p.m. Their goal is to become like the Middle East, where they broadcast the prayer across all Minneapolis. That is a fall of a city. That is a fall of a nation that is allowing for this infiltration to happen. The Muslim prayers broadcast out. Now you hear, if you go to third world countries or Middle Eastern countries, you hear these big prayers broadcast out, and you're like, that'll never happen in America. It's literally happening. You hear people like Tucker Carlson, who I actually did like. I think that he has lost his way. They're literally so against Israel that they're pushing for instance, their last guest, or one of his last guests, was pushing that, World War II was really caused by us. Hitler wasn't bad. Dude, what? And also, they pushed that Sharia law cleaned up a lot of areas. What? I mean, what are we doing? This is supposed to be conservative lean. No, this is actually woke. This is actually the woke right ideology. This is the Overton window shifting away from true conservatism and true freedom and true support for Christian values. This is a very dangerous precedent that we're setting. We see this in Austria. We see this happening in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Before long, you're going to see it across this nation because they have got one thing correct when it comes to the Muslim faith. They are starting at the ground up. They're growing their families. They're embracing what they believe, and they are spreading like wildfire. You and us as Americans need to do the same thing. We're not having children. We're not pushing our faith. We're not spreading our Christian beliefs onto other people like we should, like they have embraced. And it's going to be the fall of our nation if we're not careful. What does freedom look like? Well, freedom doesn't look like that. I'll be honest with you. I don't know one city. I don't know one city in America that's broadcasting the Christian prayers across their radio stations. Public now. Now, there's churches that do the bells. There's churches that have services on YouTube. There's churches that even buy radio spots. But I don't know any churches that gets a governmental pass. They should, because we were set up as a Christian Puritan nation, but we're not. This will be the fall of our nation. Pay attention to this. And if you really don't believe me, look at what's happening in some of these areas like in Michigan and Minnesota. It's happening. Areas in Texas, areas in Florida, areas in New York, areas in California. It's happening. And slowly but surely it will spread because we act like it's non-existent. And look, Austria, Germany, the UK are all starting to talk about, well, Sharia law is not a bad thing. It's a good thing. It's demoralizing women. It's believing that you can literally rule over anyone in your home to a point of murder. What are we doing? This is supposed to be freedom. We're not spreading freedom, we're spreading very, very, very dangerous ways of thinking. And I'll be honest with you, the woke right, the Dave Smiths, the Ian Carrolls, the Tucker Carlsons, the Candace Owens, they're actually not helping this cause because their hatred towards Israel, they're literally promoting the one thing that we wanted to stay away from. What I'd love to see is the right quit picking on its own self and quit infighting and start actually fighting the battles we're supposed to fight. Gavin Newsom should be who we fight. Mamdani is who we should fight. The fact of some of these other liberal ideologies, but no, instead Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, and a lot of these quote-unquote conservatives are infighting and going after conservatives. Why would you do that? It makes no sense, does it? And the fall of the West is very biblical. And I'll tell you something else that's kind of strange. There's this new report that Peter Thiel was doing. Now, I don't know Peter Thiel's faith. He talks and says he's a Christian. He has some very unique visions on transhumanism and on technology. And again, I don't know his faith. I hope he's a Christian. But to be honest with you, some of his stuff is a little strange. But he's doing a study. I want you to listen to this because I think this, again, speaks to biblical narratives of what we're seeing with the Islamic movement, what we're seeing with true Christianity coming back. And I believe you're going to start seeing the persecution of Christianity more and more because of that. But listen to what he's doing. Tech billionaire Peter Thiel, co-founder of PayPal and Palantir, is launching a sold-out 4-part lecture series about the biblical Antichrist. Starting September 15th in San Francisco in the Commonwealth Club, blending his Christian faith with transhumanistic views. Thiel will discuss his advancements in technologies like AI and surveillance, which ultimately will come to apocalyptic scenarios. Now, that's a little sketch. And to be honest with you, though, he does make a point to say, I believe that AI and less freedom will bring in for more control in our nation. I mean, 2 stories that represent this more than anything. Take Peter Thiel and his Antichrist talk out and talk about his faith. 2 things. The Word of God Forum come out and said that rice needs to be banned because ultimately it was causing for more carbon emissions. Do you realize rice is the biggest staple across the world, especially in third world countries and in countries that have impoverished population? They have to have rice. Now you have the Working at Forum saying, well, we don't know if we need rice. We need to look at getting rid of the way people do rice. Rice is, again, one of the staples of diets. I think it's around 65 to 70% of diets worldwide. That's control. That has nothing to do with rice. That has to do with control of the people. Another story. This is in America. 3 out of 10. That means 30% of Americans. Now you're like, 30%, that's minority. It is, but 30%? 30% of Americans support government surveillance and cameras in every household to reduce abuse and crime. They want to not only film the outside, the public roads, film the exteriors. They want to now, these 30% of people in America, which is around 80 to 90 million people, based on the numbers of our population, say it's okay for government to have cameras in our homes. Well, what if AI is allowing that? We've heard about the smart TVs, the smart fridges, the computers. What if all of a sudden that's what Palantir is? What if all of a sudden that's what AI is? What if that's all of a sudden what the government wants? 30% already embrace it. So if enough propaganda comes on along, we'll have full embracement of control, surveillance. Well, you can't eat that rice. I see you eating that rice. Put that rice down. You realize China has this? If you throw away something in China that is not part of with the norm, it hurts your social credit score. You get tickets. If you try to walk across the street where there's no walk, they're filming you. You drop on your social credit score. That depends on how you eat, the money you make. Everything is based around that system. So when we talk about Peter Thiel and how he's pushing this lecture about the Antichrist, in some facets, he actually is right that that's how easily we're looking at biblical times and end times, because AI will be used as a target of surveillance and control over its people. And then all of a sudden the World Economic Forum's coming out and saying, well, rice is dangerous. It's kind of like the beef push is dangerous. Chicken push is dangerous. The deer and rabbit have this disease now. Control the food, control the populace. Surveil the populace. They know everything about you. And all of a sudden you talk about cashless societies and digital money. I actually believe no matter what Peter Thiel's faith is, this talking point is probably pretty big, that we need to realize that we are sitting in maybe the end times. And I know people are like, oh, Colby, that's all weird. You're crazy. Just look around you. We hear that some of the newer generations are coming to Christ. That's awesome. But the older generations are not. The leadership pretty much is not. The fact that we're allowing Islam to move in. You're setting up for a very chaotic part of Americans' history that we will make. Less freedom, less food, more expense, and that moves right on to the next story. Australia. Australia now is looking to tax you if you have extra rooms in your home. If you're not using them, you should be either renting them out or now you're going to face an excess tax. Is that stupid? That's the Western movement, just like the Australian movement with Sharia law. What about Great Britain? Great Britain has now said, because of the way that we spent money and now that we're in debt up to our eyeballs, kind of like America, he even brought the fact that Great Britain is like America, we may look at something kind of like Social Security to where people who have retirements and build up their wealth, and so instead of passing along your wealth, which is a biblical thing, passing your wealth along to your children and grandchildren, building legacy, what Great Britain and what this guy was talking about was saying, we believe that estate tax shouldn't be just 30 or 40 or 50%. We believe that there should be almost a death tax of 100%, inheritance tax of 100%. Oh, maybe 99. So that way you leave with a few little peas in your pocket. But ultimately, this should go into helping other people make it. That you shouldn't be building inheritance for just you. You should build it for the world, for our areas, to help with the social movement to where everybody can have a leg up. Okay, so let's just stop just for a second. We've talked about the control element. We've talked about the food control element. We talked about surveillance element. Now we're talking about food, money. Now we're talking about money and wealth. Now we're talking about excess tax. Do you realize the danger of that? Now it's not to scare you on this Sunday. The purpose, though, is to say we are living in times of perilous conditions. Is it end times? Maybe not. Is it dangerous? Maybe so. Ultimately, it's not getting any better right now. And you can take the fact that, yes, things are better under Trump than it was Biden, but we still have a long ways to go. The dangers of the Islamic movement in America is something that it's like a silent virus, and it will cause for damage if we're not careful. And the fact that we have 30% of Americans wanting cameras in their homes that the government have rights to, that's dangerous. That is so dangerous. So along with the fact that these cities are in peril to now we're sending National Guard, that could come back and bite us, because then all that can be used as a precedent to set up full control of you. Be wary of these stories. Now that moves me right on to what Governor DeSantis says, and this is where I wish every politician would be. Now I know he's probably running for president and all that, but he brings up valid points again on the property tax. He's not let it go. I want you to listen to what he just said. Since 2020, local budgets have seen, listen to this, property tax go up 60 to 120%. I told you my property tax is going up here because a school needs to build some kind of stupid new gymnasium. We are seeing the eroding of the ability of local governments to function, so now all they've done is now charge more money from us to export their habits of blowing money. You know, local governments and state governments have to balance their budget. Well, what they don't tell you is that they just tax you more when they want to spend more. That's not balancing a budget. Balancing a budget is like when you know you're going to get paid this amount, you stay under that. I can't go to my boss as an employee and say, okay, I overspent this month, so therefore you've got to make the difference up. Is that how it works? No. What Ron DeSantis is saying, instead of going up on property tax, what we should be doing is cutting property tax and making these governments find either other ways to make this money or to save the money and quit blowing our money. It's not your money to blow, government. It is the people's money that earned it. That's a bold statement. Now, Trump has toiled with the fact of using tariffs to benefit Americans to help cut some of the income tax. I would love to see that happen. And we're going to talk about what the CBO just said about Trump's massive win. But that's coming. The biggest risk we face and the most imprisonment we face is the fact that we're losing our freedoms. But more than that, we're taxed out of existence. Between taxes and inflation, which are both caused by the government, by the way, those two things are what's causing its people to struggle the most. The reason we struggle buying the things that we need to buy because of tax and inflation. And what Ron DeSantis is bringing attention to is saying, look, if we really want Americans to thrive, just cut their tax. Like my property tax for my home, my land, my business, it's all tied together. I told you before, it's like $35,000 to $36,000 a year. Now that does make money. If you just took my house out and I didn't do anything extra, it would still be around $5,000 to $6,000 a year just for my home. Think how much if they just said, look, okay, we're going to still charge your business, which is stupid. I don't think that's right either. But say they say, okay, we're going to, instead of just saying homestead exemption, we're just going to say everybody doesn't have to pay property tax if your house is paid for, or if you've bought your house and paid your taxes on the front end. Well, my house is paid for. My son I'm building cash for. So why is it fair for the government to charge me more money when they've not done anything to earn it other than blow my money? It goes back to the fact that we thought it's crazy that Social Security is stealing money from you and your kids don't get to see it. The inheritance. It's actually inheritance tax. We make fun of what Great Britain just said, but basically you are taxed Social Security to then earn a little bit of it, a portion of it, when you're older, and then all of a sudden when you die it goes away. But you've paid into a system, right? That is a wrong system. We need to break away from this mentality that government has all the answers. And I think what Ron DeSantis is saying is, look, I'm sick of the government taking people's money and ultimately being frivolous with it. And that's what we've seen. That's why we're in the predicament we're in. That's why we're in $37 trillion worth of debt. Now that brings me up to the last story dealing with money and dealing with Trump's big win, massive win. Trump just got a huge announcement from the CBO. Now the CBO is tending to be very establishment, tends to push against Trump. This is the same CBO that said that the big beautiful bill and all these tariffs will cause for massive problems. Remember that. Now I don't like the big beautiful bill. I've told you that. But the tariffs I was always for. I want you to listen to what was said just now from the CBO. The CBO finally admitted that Trump's tariffs will reduce the deficit by $4 trillion. It says that for all the conservatives that said the tariffs were the wrong way forward, it's actually going to drop the deficit by $4 trillion over the next coming weeks, months, and years. It said this is the first time that we've seen the CBO ever say that any policy that a government has put in has actually cut the deficit. Truthfully, that's a big win. Jerome Powell is going to feel pressure because the Fed is realizing, and even banks who are part of the Fed, who is part of this sinister organization, have all realized it's kind of hard to say we're going to keep interest rates up the next few months because the economy is doing better. Now, he keeps trying to blame the tariffs. Jerome Powell keeps trying to blame the tariffs. However, the CBO, who does not even like Trump, admits that the tariffs actually will help lower the deficit and the spending in America. Now, here's the way that we have to look at this. Trump gets a win. It's kind of like Doge. Doge gets a win. It's kind of like Ron DeSantis says something about property tax. But what is Congress to do with it? Congress is still going to probably blow our money. So therefore, if Congress chooses to keep spending money, you have to do your due diligence and get them out of office. Our problem is not Trump or DeSantis and them wanting to cut the taxes. Our problem is Congress. So if you really want to make changes, like you know how we just saw John Bolton raided? I wish Trump would say, look, for every one of you politicians, the FBI will come for you too. Because you know good and well, Republicans or Democrats, it doesn't matter. All these congressmen that are getting filthy rich, I doubt they're getting filthy rich because they're owning a business and doing it correctly. I imagine they're getting filthy rich because of side deals, side hustles, and backroom negotiations. And I'd love to see Trump say, you know what, we're going to stop that. I'd love to see that we're either going to vote to cut the deficit and cut the spending, because you're the ones getting filthy rich off the Americans. And to be honest with you, if you don't stop, the FBI may have to come investigate you. Like the Lindsey Grahams, like the Mitch McConnells. I mean, I think that we need to do that. I would love to see that every ounce of money that a congressman and Senate makes, because remember, it's public money. I mean, we're the ones paying them, correct? I think we should be able to see every tax return of every person in Congress and Senate, and you explain where this million came from, where this 10 million came from, where this 20 million came from. Explain where you got this information for the stock pick. Where'd you get this information for this business deal? I believe you're going to start seeing a lot more honesty if you did that. But sadly, no one's calling for that. I love what Ron DeSantis is calling for, and I love the fact that Trump got this massive win. But if we really want to fix it, even though we want governors and presidents to do better, the problem is with the Congress, because they're the ones appropriating, they're the ones taking your money, and they're the ones that ultimately spending your money. Just remember that. We can blame the person over the ship, but the Congress is really to blame. And if we really want to change something about the spending problem and actually get on the same page, we got to get rid of some of this Congress and Senate. Now, last thing I want to talk about, because it is Sunday. I want to go back to the story with Peter Thiel just for a second. I don't believe any man deserves I believe we can learn from men. I believe we can seek wisdom, and there could be some very wise guidance. I go to a class on Sunday night that's got one of the wisest guys ever. I love listening to him to speak. But ultimately, he's a human. He'll tell you that. The thing that I think we should learn is no matter how many times we listen to podcasts, how many times we listen to influencers, how many times we listen to politicians, how many times we listen to all these people, that they are finite men that will get old and die. We realize that hard times are coming. Hard times are here. I heard a story yesterday that just broke my heart. It's a family that was breaking up, and I'm telling you, man, there's kids involved, and the kids were already seeing struggles because of this. And this is the second family this week where I've heard that life gave them lemons, and instead of making lemonade, it got squirted in their eye, and their marriages are dissolving. Their children's lives will be different. And you know what I hate about that? We all deal with hard times, and man, we've been so blessed still. Please, if you miss every part of this video today, remember this. We are going to go through struggles, and things are not going to be easy. But there is only one person, one thing that you can hold in high regards and know that's going to be okay, and that's God and Jesus. One thing I've realized is no matter how much I give, and no matter how much I do, I'm going to probably let my family down. I'm going to let someone down. No matter how great Trump or DeSantis or Massey or these congressmen do or this person does, no matter what they do, they're going to let us down because they're finite men. Please, if you can learn anything from this video today, that yes, we can congratulate the accolades. We can hope for the best, but ultimately, our trust needs to come into the Lord. And look, I mean, of course, you know I'm a spiritual Christian guy, but a lot of times these videos, I just wanted to be about conservative and freedom, but the only way that we're going to have true freedom is through Christ. And when you hear stories like when you see families broke up, when you see that people can't make it paycheck to paycheck, when you see that Islam is moving closer and closer, when you hear that people want surveillance in their home, when you hear that the cities are falling to pieces and they want the cities to fall to pieces, that is biblical. That is very, very end time-ish. It's not prophetic. I'm not saying that as a prophecy. I'm just saying it's scary. And the only thing that's going to help us know that it's going to be okay is our faith. Please focus not on what Peter Thiel's saying, but the fact that things are getting worse. Don't focus on the wins that Trump got. Remember that there's Congress that still have sinister plans. Our focus should always stay in true hope and true faith in God. So my goal for you today is to prepare, to be ready spiritually. And then when we prepare spiritually, we can worry about all these other things. Hard times are coming. And we shouldn't just say, well, you know, God protect us. I believe God gives us smart to stock up, to be smart, to be wise, to protect our family. And I think that's what we should all be doing. Guys, thank you so much for watching. We appreciate you. God bless.